In today's video, I'm going to be making photos look old with some nifty editing techniques and also this piece of paper. Let me explain. These are a bunch of vintagey old photos I found on Google Images by just looking up vintagey old photos. And this is what I'm going to show you how to make today, turning a modern photo like this into a vintagey old looking photo like this. But before we start, it's important to look what are the elements in an old photo or what makes that photo look old. I noticed that almost all of them have a few things in common. First, they almost all have this warm tone to them, and the colors are almost completely desaturated. The photos are basically orange. Most of them have this dirt or scratch texture to them, like they've been crumbled up and thrown around a whole bunch. In order for your photos to look vintage, location and setting is very important. Something that wouldn't quite work for a vintage photo is a photo in New York, standing in the middle of Times Square. Some of those photos were taken like 100 years ago, so that would be too modern. But something that might work a little better is taking a photo in, for example, the countryside or outside in nature. If you're taking your photo indoors, just make sure that you don't have anything too modern in your background. Now, of course, there are other things to be aware of, like subject matter, lighting, camera settings, but these are just some of the most common things that you would notice in a vintage photo. The photo I'm going to make vintage is this. This is a portrait I shot of my dad a few days ago. As you can see, it's a pretty simple photo. The background's not too modern. He's wearing a suit, and honestly, it's already giving me vintage vibes, but let's make it a little more vintage. To do this, I'm going to bring this photo into Lightroom. The first thing I'm going to do is add some orange to make the photo look more warm. Then I'm going to bring down the exposure, the contrast, and the shadows. Now this photo is looking a bit too saturated, so I'm just going to bring the saturation down just a bit along with the clarity slider. Now I want to bring out the texture in this photo a little bit more, so I'm going to take the texture slider and just slide it all the way. I'm also going to bring up the dehaze value just a bit. In the tone curve, I'm going to flatten the image just a bit by lifting up the shadows and making some more adjustments. Next, I'm going to saturate the purple and the magentas. Now, I usually don't do this. It might bring up some color artifacts, but for a vintage photo, I think that's okay. Then in the detail, I'm going to sharpen the image all the way to add a little bit more grain in the photo. And that's it. Well, not quite. What about the sheet of paper from earlier? What are we supposed to do with that? So basically, what I'm going to do is I'm going to crumple this piece of paper and use the wrinkles to add it onto the photo in Photoshop. Let me show you. Just really crumple and crush the sheet of paper. And when you're done, it should look like this. Yeah, I might have crumpled it a little too much. Basically, what I'm going to do is take a photo of this crumpled, crushed piece of paper on a black background. After I've taken the photo, I'm going to jump into Photoshop. The first thing I'm going to do is import the vintage photo I did, and then I'm going to import the photo of the paper with all the wrinkles. Then I'm going to make some adjustments to it. First thing I'm going to do is make it completely black and white. Then I'm going to bring down the exposure until I can really see the wrinkles. I'll up the contrast, down the shadows, and then I'm going to bring up the clarity, the texture, and the dehaze. Once I'm done with my adjustments, I'm just going to click OK. The next thing I'm going to do is crop the photo so I only see the paper. You might not have to do this depending on your photo, but the only thing I need is the paper so I can cut everything else. Then I'm going to scale up, rotate, and basically make adjustments to the paper so that it completely covers the photo. And then I'm going to go to the blending modes and select multiply. By then you can see the vintage look coming together. But there are a couple more things we can do to push it even further. Then I'm going to go to images, adjustments, levels. And then I'm going to select the middle arrow and move it to the left. So basically the way this works is the more you move it to the left, the more wrinkles you see and the darker the images get. But if you move it to the right, the image gets lighter, but you see less of those wrinkles. Now this is already a good vintage photo. You could stop here, but I'm going to take it a little bit further. What I'm going to do is add some dirt scratches and fingerprint textures to the photo. You don't have to go this extra step, but it just makes the whole old vintage vibes come together even more. Now here it is before and after. And that's basically how you can make your own vintage old photos. It's really a fun process, and if you do give it a try, I'd love to see it. Post it on Instagram, tag me at samfiction318. I'd love to see what you guys come up with. But that's it for today's video. If you've enjoyed this video, learned something new from it, feel free to show support by leaving a like on the video, sharing it with your friends, or even subscribing to my channel. I upload filmmaking related content like this don't have a schedule yet, but make sure to turn on post notifications so that you don't miss when I upload. That's it for me. Keep creating, and I'll see you in the next one. I need a sheet of paper. 1 second.